Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a news update for the 29th of January 2023. I'm a little bit late to the party, sorry, had other things on a Sunday morning to attend to. Where should we start with the overnight and other news? Well, where we usually start, which is the Ukrainian release figures for the Russian losses. As ever, usual caveats, propaganda, possibly not accurate. Russians don't produce a similar sort of figures, but here we go anyway. I find them indicative. So, what do we have? 650 liquidated personnel. Of course, the discussion about what liquidated means is always pertinent. That is fewer losses than on previous days, but then this is a Sunday. That might have something to do with it. Also, it does appear marginally quieter in certain places on the front. Not really sure what that tells us, but that's about average. Having said that, 8 tanks, 22 APCs. So although 650 might be a drop, 22 is a considerable number of APCs. And I believe things have been pretty bad for the Russians around the Vuhledar area, and that could go some way to explaining that number. 7 artillery systems, 10 vehicles and fuel tanks. So the first day we have not had any aircraft or helicopters. Significant possibly, but yeah, APCs, huge number. Okay, moving on. As it happens, I quoted General Pavel, the newly elected Czech president, says Shashank Joshi of The Economist, in my cover story on the Russian army's problems last year. Now, this is the news that General Pavel has won the presidential election, I believe in a landslide. He's a former NATO army general and is thus very likely to be very heavily pro-Ukrainian. And the person he was up against was a populist leader that arguably wouldn't have been. And this is really good news if you're pro-Ukraine. So this is great news. There's no doubt about it. In my opinion. Let's just refer you to this AP News piece on the news. Retired Czech Army General Pavel wins presidential election. So, Petr Pavel, a retired Army General, decisively defeated populist billionaire Andrej Babiš in a runoff vote Saturday to become the Czech Republic's new president. Pavel, 61, will succeed controversy-courting Milos Zeman in a largely ceremonial but prestigious post. His election is expected to cement the country's Western orientation following Zeman's decade in office. And we'll come on to that in a second. So Pavel, who ran as an independent, is a former chairman of NATO's military committee, the alliance's highest military body. He fully endorsed the Czech Republic's military and humanitarian support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia's invasion and stresses the importance of the country's membership of the European Union and NATO. Quote, foreign policy is his strong point, Petr Just, an analyst from the Metropolitan University Prague, said. He just noted that Pavel's NATO experience and views would boost the country's Western leanings. Otherwise, the president has little executive power since Czechia is run by a government chosen and led by the prime minister. Pavel said he planned to travel to Slovakia and Ukraine for his first foreign trips as president, and also to Poland to assure Andrzej Duda that his country fully respects its NATO commitments and the alliance's principle of collective defense. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky congratulated Pavel in a tweet written in Czech, adding, he looked forward to their close cooperation. Czechia has been a firm supporter of Ukraine in its fight against Russia's invasion. The Ukraine war was a core campaign issue. Babiš presented himself, so his opponent, Pavel's opponent, presented himself as a peacemaker and labelled Pavel a warmonger due to his military past. In his most controversial statement, Babiš said he wouldn't send troops to Poland or the Baltics if the NATO allies were attacked. He later backtracked, so it's pretty controversial. So Zeman, the outgoing president, had backed Babiš, one of the country's richest people. The two men share Eurosceptic views and the habit of using anti-migrant rhetoric. While Babiš has been a divisive figure, he maintained his popular support with older voters. He accused Pavel during a campaign marred by false accusations of having been a KGB-trained communist spy. He provided no evidence for the claim and went on to compare his opponent to Russian President Vladimir Putin. I mean, there's a bit of projection going on there because Pavel is far more likely to be against Putin than indeed Babiš. So Zeman, who he's replacing, who took office in March 2013, was the country's first president elected by popular vote. His second and final 5-year term expires in March. Lawmakers elected the previous two presidents, Václav Havel and Václav Klaus. Before the February 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Zeman divided the nation with his pro-Russia stance and support for closer ties with China. So this is, if you're pro-Ukraine, this is going in the right direction for sure, and that is very good news. Okay, moving on to something else. So this is an important development to watch closely, says Trent Telenko. In my opinion, the Russians are looking for Ukrainian mobile air defences as a top priority to get Shahed 136s through. This is in light of OSINT Defender saying, according to the Ukrainian General Staff, they have begun to observe Russian recon elements utilising drones along the length of the Belarusian-Russian border. So this is the idea that they're using recon drones around here to look for air defences, and if they find the air defences, they can take them out and then get the Shaheeds through, or at least take them out with Shaheeds, possibly, but of course those air defences will be looking for the Shaheeds. So this is a development, as Trent Telenko says, to watch closely. Miraculous recovery of 20 Spanish Leopard 2A4 tanks. So this is the idea that Spain has had like 53 tanks, but they said they're in a bad state of repair, and we're not sure how many we can get to Ukraine. And they were saying this before the Germans said that they were going to give their Leopard. So it's like, oh, it's sitting a little bit on the fence. Then after German approvals, 20 Spanish Army Leopard 2A4 tanks stored in Casetas in Zaragoza are in acceptable condition all of a sudden. So lots of people saying, oh, it's interesting how suddenly they're good to go. But that's great news. No matter what, it's great news. 20 Leopards is good news for Ukraine. Poland will send another 74 tanks to Ukraine in addition to the 276 it's already delivered. Poland is, so this is the, and I've already reported on this, it's just, further confirming it, 14 Leopard tanks and then 60 other modernized tanks, so Soviet era but modernized tanks. Poland is leading a tank coalition to get Leopard 2 and other tanks to the front line to fight the Russian fascist invaders of Europe, says this tweet. There are lots of tanks that have been promised. The latest was Ukraine saying that they've been promised something like 324 tanks, which is above the 300 to 500, or above the 300 point of the range that they were asking for, which is quite phenomenal. Microchips produced by Dutch companies, despite the sanctions, reach Russia through intermediaries. Deliveries are made to 3 Russian defense enterprises. This is stated in an investigation done by NOS and Nieuwsuur. My Dutch isn't that good, sorry. This is confirming what we already know, which is that sanctions have limited effect on stopping Russia getting hold of things like microchips to build pieces of equipment in their defense industry. Now, the idea is that they are struggling to build certain things, but they're still able to build some of them, and that's because the microchips can get through. It's not necessarily the company that makes microchips' fault. They're selling them in kosher ways to completely fine enterprises who then sell them, and then they eventually get to Russia, and that's what needs to be stopped. But that's really difficult to do. That's still a problem. Update Europe. So there's all this talk about F-16s. Well, have they been training them? Then there've been these claims that actually they've just produced a list of pilots that can go to be trained, so that then implies they haven't been training them. And some people are saying they know that they've been training them in America. Some people are saying, I know that what is going on, not really sure. So Yuri Inhat clarified later today. So also El País, a Spanish paper, made some claims about F-16s that apparently was wrong, and it's based on a mistranslation. So it's not presently Ukraine is not presently anticipating that the fighter jets and their specific number from the Allies, as the Spanish El País reported. The misunderstanding translation caused the error. But what has been happening over time, don't know. At the Pentagon, push to send F-16s to Ukraine picks up steam. So I reported that there was some bipartisan support for F-16s and ATACMS from a few senators. And in fact, I'm not going to read this all. It's quite a big article. This at the Pentagon, there is growing support for the idea that F-16s be pushed. And then if we go towards the end of the article, it says lawmaker support as well. So I talked to you about 3 lawmakers. So providing F-16s is likely to win some support on Capitol Hill, where Democrats and Republicans alike have chided the administration for not moving quickly enough, or for withholding certain capabilities such as a longer-range artillery. Sending Russian-made MiG fighters to Ukraine via Eastern European countries that still fly them won bipartisan support, though a weapon swap ultimately never came to fruition. Representative Mike Quigley from Democrat from Illinois, who co-chairs a congressional Ukrainian caucus, said he's not against providing F-16s to Kyiv, but broadly favours providing Ukraine with whatever works. So basically, F-16s is fine, but if you need MiGs before F-16s, then yeah, we'll go with that. He says you can't half-ass a war. Putin's not. You've got to meet Putin armor for armor, weapon for weapon, because there's already an extraordinary disadvantage in number of troops. Quigley said, "Whatever works, whatever they need, send to them." My message when I first started talking about this is what were once vices are now habits. He said everything we ever proposed was seen as escalatory. But the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, Representative Adam Smith from Washington, cast doubt on the need to send F-16s into the conflict where fighters haven't proved pivotal. "I'm not opposed to it," Smith said. "It's just not at the top of the list of anybody's priorities who's focused on what weapons the fight really needs right now." He noted that F-16s, much like older MiG jets that were debated last year, would be vulnerable to Russian air defenses and fifth-generation fighters. Instead, Smith underscored the need to supply ammunition for air defense, batteries, longer range missiles, yes, tanks and armored vehicles. What we really need to be focused on is air defense, number one, he said, and number two, artillery. That's generally in line with actually what Ukrainians are saying as well. However, the argument that they are prone to Russian air defenses, well, the Ukrainian jets are already prone to those, right? So there's no difference. In fact, the F-16s are arguably better, so therefore these should do better against air defenses than, say, the MiGs and Sukhoi fighters being used. So I don't know that argument really holds, but in general, yeah, air defense, artillery, but that shouldn't be mutually exclusive. Yeah, and throw in some F-16s as well would be my claim. But then I'm up for getting this thing finished as soon as possible, which means giving Ukraine everything. Just give them everything. Get this war finished. HIMARS have been working on Ilovaisk. So Ilovaisk is this area just behind Donetsk. That is an important logistical hub. I think it's there. That has been hit again by HIMARS, not for the first time. In fact, it's at least the third time I'm aware it's been hit by HIMARS. Railways are fairly easy to fix, so once you hit them with HIMARS, it doesn't take too long to fix railways. So that's why you see places get hit multiple times, but also you hope that it takes out what's on the railway. So we have had at Ilovaisk previously fuel trains being hit, and that causing more of a problem than just hitting like empty railways. So I presume there's real-time intelligence going on, and the Ukrainians know what is parked up at the train station, and that's when they hit it. So after a heavy offensive in the Solidar area, which, according to some estimates, cost the Wagner Group more than 4,000 killed and about 10,000 wounded, Prigozhin's mercenaries are reducing their presence in the Bakhmut direction. Right, this is something, and I'm going to say more about this in my Frontline update, but this is, ISW have been talking about a culmination in Bakhmut for Wagner for some time, and I've been kind of sitting on the fence. I've been reporting that, and I think, there is good indications that they are coming to a culmination, but then suddenly there's been this continual successes around there, which doesn't indicate culmination. However, I'm now of the opinion, agree with the ISW here, that I think Wagner have culminated. And what you're seeing now is predominantly VDV, airborne troops, and DPR, and other regular Russian troops taking over. They've taken a baton and they're continuing the attacks in Bakhmut. This is what appears to be reported. People like Syrian Maps always talk about the Russian troops and DPR as opposed to Wagner, probably because they're backed by the Russian MOD. But it certainly appears that the Wagner have taken a bit of a back. They've. I don't know. I just don't think they have the troops, because there are these reports that they've lost so many troops. I've got a thread that I forgot to show yesterday. That was a thread on graveyards, that they've had to make more graveyards and expand existing ones, and in fact something like 7 times the amount of space or something like that. They've just got huge losses, but that's not to say that Ukrainians aren't suffering huge losses as well. Yes, they will be. But if we're talking about Wagner particularly, they have, yes, been successful in making ground, but at what cost? The cost is of huge numbers of troops, particularly in their convicts that they send in human waves, not necessarily so much with their original kind of well-trained Wagner mercenaries, more with the convicts that have been recruited, and they've made huge losses, and it really does seem like they have culminated. The rest of the work is being done by other Russian troops. So this is a big problem going forward. Sweden's NATO accession process is temporarily suspended. suspended, says the Swedish Foreign Ministry. I wonder whether this is due to the Quran burning incident and Turkey being vetoing their accession, and then the foreign minister's visit to Turkey being cancelled, Swedish foreign minister's visit. So yeah, all a bit of a problem going on there. So then we go abroad. This is something very interesting development. So strange events in Iran tonight. Looks like a dose of their own medicine, with reports of a drone attack on the Ministry of Defense building in the city of Isfahan. This is said to be an ammunition production center. So there was there, but that's not the only one. Media in Iran are also reporting an oil processing plant in the Salimi industrial area in the city of Azar Shahir in Tabriz is spectacularly ablaze. The big problems there. And then a third one, one more video from crazy scenes in Iran tonight. So these various places that have been hit apparently with drones. There have been French Mirage jets, not French as in built by the French, but Iranian Mirage jets then going into the air to try and like check out what's going on. It's certainly an interesting development in Iran. I don't know who's behind this, but yeah, we'll have something to definitely keep an eye on. Okay. Some of you might just accuse me of Elon Musk bashing, but it's not just him. This is just a cautionary tale about being really careful. If you are, and this is the same for any side, if something confirms your view, you shout about it. Say, look at this is brilliant. I've done this, and I've found out later that actually that thing I claimed wasn't correct, and hopefully I try and put a correction in. Someone the other day said one of my videos that I showed, not my videos, but a video of some armored vehicles getting hit had a watermark on it that was an actual the Ghost Battalion of the LPR, I think, and that it wasn't Russian vehicles that hit; these are Ukrainian vehicles being hit. And I take that seriously. So I went away, and the two of the main sources I got that from, it was all quite viral. I put that to them, and I didn't hear anything back, and I've been unable to confirm, but that could well be an incorrect video. And if I do definitely make a statement that's incorrect, I do try and pin a comment in at the top of the comments to say correction, this was wrong, because it's really important. I need to be I want to be accurate in myself. I want to know that what I believe is true. So that's the number one thing. And then as a channel, I obviously want to say things that are as truthful as can be, because otherwise people will just never come to the channel because I'm just spouting rubbish. So I do want to be really accurate. Anyway, Twitter chief Elon Musk and two with hundreds of thousands of followers. Actually, if you take into account Musk, it's probably millions of followers, ranting about a completely made-up report about Ukraine tweeted by some random account without even bothering to check if the tweet they're reacting to is actually true or not. This was a big problem. This tweet went viral and it was completely fabricated. So this is probably a good bit of Russian information, propaganda, fifth generation warfare. So the tweet was from this random person: report, Ukraine requests immediate extradition of Ukrainian military age men in Europe. Okay, so Ukraine have apparently asked for anyone who's military age to be extradited back to Ukraine if they're Ukrainian and are not in Ukraine. And then Elon Musk going exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Obviously, I didn't say too much. And then Ian Miles Chong saying it's absolutely insane. I hope the EU denies the request. These men should not have to die for Zelensky. How many more lives have to be lost, says Luke Rudkowski. And the idea is that now Zelensky gets bad rap for this and Ukraine gets bad rap, and it's made up. They haven't asked for that. That hasn't happened. It's just complete lies. Just be careful what you retweet. And that's not having to go at these individuals per se. That's just a cautionary tale for everyone, myself included. But if I say something that's wrong, right, I have a really limited following. If these people say something that's wrong and shout it and use their platform to highlight that, then you have a problem. And this is where moderation for places like Twitter, we can have that freedom of speech discussion again. And I'll mention that again because of some of the accusations that people have leveled at me, which are completely incorrect, I would say, or largely. We have a problem here. If you are able to spread lies and then people jump on that and shout that out, then that does damage. That is harmful to human lives, arguably. So Twitter having a moderation panel that's now been got rid of by Elon Musk, like this kind of tweet is the one that should be shut down, right? Because that is disinformation that can do damage to international politics. If it's outright lie and outright falsehood, there is a place for that to be censored. There's no point saying, well, there's two sides of the story. That's a lie. There's truth, right? If that's an outright lie, then that shouldn't be able to be amplified as if it is true. So there is a place for that kind of thing being censored. I don't have a problem with that being censored. I am not some kind of censorship Uberführer, right? If you know my previous blog, whereas for almost 10 years, I allowed anyone to say what they liked. I have a hugely open approach to freedom of speech because I'm just some kind of little blog or little YouTube channel. It's not really that important. But when you start getting people in international politics who are important or who have a great impact on politics, then to allow people to say what they like and say dangerous things, the ramifications are somewhat different, and there needs to be different approaches. So I'm all for freedom of speech, and I don't censor my own threads, and I'll explain that later. Even though some people accuse me of doing that, you need to know what YouTube do because I don't do that. But here there is a problem. So I meant to say that was back with my Iranian one, which is ammunition factory in Iran. According to preliminary information, the enterprise was tracked by a drone. Air defense system is operating in the area. Anyway, sorry, I forgot to mention that. And there you go. So that's the end of the news for today. There's probably other things I've missed. I've been doing other things this morning, so I do apologise about that. Anyway, I'll get onto my frontline update now, but this should keep you going. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, and share. And all the ways you can support my channel are in the description below. Take care. Speak soon.